What if your silence said more than any long-winded explanation ever could? What if leaving her on read wasn't rejection, but revelation of your true power? And what if mastering restraint turned you into the mystery she can't stop thinking about? Let's dive deep into what really happens when you leave her on read, not to hurt her but to protect your peace, reclaim your power, and transform silence into your strongest statement. Have you ever noticed what happens when you don't reply? No dramatic goodbye, no emotional rant, you just leave her on read. And that silence, it speaks louder than 1,000 messages. It shifts the entire dynamic quietly, powerfully, without warning. In this video, we're diving into what really happens when you leave her on read, not to play games, not to get revenge, but to understand the ripple effect of stillness and why sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all. Let's begin. Number 1. The ego bruise. Most people aren't prepared for emotional distance, especially when it comes from someone they thought they had power over. She might have assumed you double text, send a long explanation, or ask if something's wrong. But instead, you give her space, not out of spite, but out of self-control. That's where the shift begins. She doesn't get the reaction she's used to, and that stings. Not her heart yet, but her pride. It's like she threw the ball expecting a return serve. But you stepped off the court entirely, and suddenly the game she thought she controlled doesn't exist anymore. Here's the thing most men don't realize. When you leave her on read, you're not ignoring her. You're choosing not to engage in a dynamic that no longer serves your peace. Your silence isn't passive, it's intentional. It's a message that says, I'm not here to prove my worth to someone who doubts it. Let me give you an example. A guy dates a girl who constantly tests him, pulls back, replies late, plays hot and cold. One day, after a long message from her filled with half-truths and emotional bait, he simply reads it and says nothing. No anger, no need for validation. He just lets it be. And what happens? First, silence from her. Then confusion. Then the messages start coming. Did you get my text? I just want to talk. And finally, the shift. She begins to wonder why he didn't respond. The power flips. She's no longer controlling the conversation. She's replaying it in her head, trying to understand what changed. The Stoic man doesn't leave someone on read to hurt them. He does it to preserve his peace, to avoid unnecessary drama, to step back when he realizes that responding would only pull him into emotional chaos he never asked for. Silence becomes a shield. And what's wild? That single quiet act of restraint can echo louder than any paragraph you could have written. Not because you were cold, but because you were calm. So the next time you're tempted to explain yourself, to argue, or to justify, ask yourself this: is your response rooted in ego or in self-respect? Because often when you leave her on read, you're not just withdrawing attention, you're reminding her and yourself what quiet strength really looks like. Number 2, the internal spiral. She starts replaying the conversation, reading into every word she sent. Overthinking becomes her companion. Because when a man doesn't react, it forces a woman to reflect. That's the quiet power of leaving her on read. It doesn't spark a war of words, it awakens a war within. She might glance at her phone a dozen times wondering, did I say too much? Did I push him too far? Why isn't he replying? What once felt like control now feels like confusion. And here's the twist. Your silence doesn't just echo, it amplifies her own thoughts. When a man stays grounded, when he doesn't rush to fix, defend, or chase, he becomes the mirror. And that reflection can be uncomfortable because now, without your validation or emotional reaction, she's left alone with her own behavior. Every subtle jab, Every passive-aggressive message, every test she thought you'd fail. Now they replay in her mind with new meaning. This is where overthinking blooms. She goes through the messages again, rereads them in a different tone, maybe even drafts something else, then deletes it because she's not sure anymore how you'll respond or if you ever will. And you don't feed the fire. Like a Stoic, you remain unmoved, not out of apathy but out of discipline. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And sometimes the strongest reaction is no reaction at all. Imagine a man gets a long message from the woman he was seeing, full of mixed signals. She says she's confused, she needs space, but also throws in how she misses him. The old version of him would have responded instantly trying to fix it, but now he reads it. He sits with it, and then nothing. No reply, no panic, just peace. She spirals, not because he was cruel, but because he was calm. That's what emotional self-mastery does. It doesn't yell, it doesn't chase. It makes people pause. It creates a space where they have to confront the weight of their own choices. And if she's truly invested, that silence, it won't feel like indifference. It'll feel like reflection, because a man who can sit with stillness, who can hold the tension without cracking, that's not just rare, that's powerful. Take a moment to sit with that. Reflect not just on her overthinking, but on your own growth. How many times in the past did you rush to reply, to explain, to rescue the moment? And now look at the shift. You're no longer chasing clarity, you're becoming it. That's the beauty of emotional discipline. It transforms silence into strength and absence into impact. If this part spoke to you, drop your thoughts in the comments or just type "I stay grounded." I'd love to hear how this resonates with your own journey. Let's keep going. Number 3, the power shift. You flipped the dynamic without saying a word. The one who holds silence holds the frame. She thought she had your attention in her hands. Now she's trying to earn it back. And that's the beauty of calm detachment. It doesn't require confrontation. It doesn't demand an explanation. It works in silence. When you leave her on red, you subtly reclaim control of the emotional current. You're no longer orbiting her mood, reacting to every shift. Instead, you become the center of your own gravity. And that shift is felt deeply, even if it's never spoken aloud. What used to be her upper hand now feels like a void. She went from being the chooser to questioning if she's still chosen. That tension she once placed in your hands, will he reply? Will he chase? Is now reversed. Suddenly, you've become the unpredictable one, the one she can't quite read. And unpredictability, it sparks curiosity. Curiosity leads to desire, and desire, well, that's where everything starts to tilt. But here's the key. You're not playing a game. You're exercising self-command. As Marcus Aurelius taught, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. In this case, the best response to emotional manipulation, inconsistency, or ego-driven power plays is simply not to participate. That's how you hold power. Not through dominance, but through indifference to validation. Imagine this. She sends a message with a subtle dig, a touch of sarcasm, maybe even baiting you for a reaction. The old you might have taken the bait, defended yourself, argued, tried to clear things up. But now you leave it on red. Not with malice, but with mastery. Because now she's the one analyzing your move. She's the one uncertain. She's the one feeling the weight of a power she used to take for granted. A man who doesn't need to respond is a man who doesn't need approval. That's what makes him magnetic. So when you hold back, not from fear but from strength, you're not just controlling the frame, you are the frame. Let your silence remind her that your attention was never guaranteed. It was earned, and once lost, it's not easily regained. Number 4, the curiosity trigger. Why didn't he reply? That question eats away at her calm. You've now become a mystery, and humans chase what they don't fully understand. It's strange, isn't it? You didn't ghost her. You didn't lash out. You simply left it on read, one small decision, and suddenly her mind becomes a maze of possibilities. Did you lose interest? Are you seeing someone else? Are you testing her? She doesn't know. And that is what drives the curiosity. Not knowing becomes the itch she can't scratch. You see, we're wired to seek closure. We crave understanding, especially when we're used to being the one in control. When you don't offer that closure, when you don't respond, explain, or react, she's forced to fill in the blanks. And the more questions she asks herself, the more space you occupy in her mind. A man of depth understands this. He knows that mystery creates gravity. He doesn't spill himself out in the first act. He lets things unfold naturally, quietly. He knows that when you're fully predictable, you lose intrigue. But when you hold something back, not to manipulate, but to preserve your own energy, people lean in. They become curious. They start paying closer attention. Stoicism teaches us the value of restraint, of not giving in to every urge to speak, defend, or clarify. As Seneca said, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. But it's not just anger. Delay or deliberate silence can be the most potent response in any emotional situation, because it gives them time to reflect and you time to remain centered. Picture this. She's scrolling through old conversations looking for a sign. She's hovering over your profile, trying to read between the lines. She notices you're active, but you haven't replied. That silence, it becomes louder than any words. You could have written because now you're the question she didn't prepare for. And the deeper her curiosity runs, the more she starts to reevaluate how she treated you. That's what makes silence so powerful. It's not passive. It's a presence that forces self-reflection. So remember, you don't need to prove anything. Let your absence stir the questions her ego tried to silence. Let your self-control spark a curiosity that chaos never could. Because in a world where everyone overshares, the man who says nothing says the most. If this part made you pause even for a second, that's the point. Mystery isn't about playing games. It's about having enough self-worth to not hand over your energy every time someone expects it. Take a moment and ask yourself, am I leading with presence or seeking validation? If you felt this shift, let me know in the comments. And if you're finding value in this, don't forget to like the video so we can keep this message reaching more men who need it. Let's move forward. Number 5, the mirror effect. Your silence reflects her own intentions back at her. Was she genuine? Was she testing? You gave her no reaction, so now she's left facing her own reflection. And that's the moment things begin to shift. Not just externally, but within her. Because when a man responds emotionally, it gives her something to push against, something to argue with, something to manipulate. But when he responds with silence, that's when her own actions become louder. That's when she starts asking herself, why did I say that? Was I trying to provoke something? Did I go too far? You didn't accuse. You didn't explain. You didn't try to decode her behavior. Instead, like a calm lake, you just reflected back what she put out. And that's the beauty of silence. It doesn't attack the person, it forces the person to sit with themselves. This is the kind of internal discomfort that makes people rethink everything. Because without your reaction to lean on, she can no longer blame you for her emotional state. She can't twist the narrative, all that's left is truth. Stoicism teaches us that the wise man doesn't need to defend his peace. He lives in alignment with it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." That's the principle at work here. You don't need to prove her wrong or call her out. Your composure speaks for itself. Imagine this scenario. She sends a message dripping with sarcasm or emotional bait, the kind that once would have triggered you. Maybe something like, "Guess you don't care anymore." But this time, instead of falling into the trap, you read it and say nothing. That's silence. It doesn't go unnoticed, in fact, it echoes. Suddenly, she's not just upset about your silence. She's forced to sit with the intent behind her own words. And that's where the mirror appears. Not one you held up, but one her conscience revealed. A man grounded in Stoic thought doesn't seek revenge through reaction. He lets time, silence, and consistency show what words often fail to. And in that stillness, the truth about her intentions rises to the surface. So when you leave her on red and she's left wrestling with the why, understand this. You didn't abandon the conversation. You elevated it. You gave her a chance to see herself, and that's more powerful than any response you could have typed. Number 6. The need for validation. She might post something bold, a story, a quote, a seductive picture, not for the world, but for you. Because being left on red didn't just bother her, it unsettled her identity. When a woman is used to having your eyes on her, your quick replies, your emotional availability, your silence becomes deafening. It's not just the absence of a response, it's the absence of control. She no longer has the certainty that she still matters to you, and that uncertainty creates discomfort. So what does she do? She seeks validation. Not always directly, but in the way she knows might pull you back in. She might post a picture with just the right amount of mystery. She might share a quote about moving on or knowing your worth, hoping you'll see it and feel something. But underneath it all, the message is simple. Do I still matter to you? And here's where most men slip. They break the silence. They swipe up, react, or worse, respond, emotionally but not you. Because a man who is rooted in himself doesn't validate someone just because they demand it. He offers presence when it's deserved, not when it's baited. A Stoic man, as Epictetus would suggest, doesn't let others determine his emotional direction. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid with regard to external things. That includes being misunderstood when you choose silence. When she thinks you're ignoring her to be cold when in truth, you're honoring your own boundaries. Think of it like this. She lights a fire hoping you'll come closer, but you've learned to stay warm without needing someone else's flame. You don't chase temporary heat when you've built your own internal fire. This isn't about punishment, it's about discipline. When someone tries to pull your focus with flash and noise and you remain still, that's power. That's clarity. That's what separates the reactive from the composed. She wanted a reaction. Instead, she got reflection. And maybe, just maybe, that silence will lead her to something far more valuable than a double tap or message back. It might lead her to growth, or it might not. But either way, you didn't lose yourself to gain attention. You remained grounded, unbothered, whole, and that is what truly unsettles her. Take a breath and really let that sink in. This isn't about coldness. It's about clarity. When you resist the pull of validation traps, you show her and yourself that your peace isn't up for negotiation. That kind of restraint isn't weakness, it's leadership. So ask yourself, are you reacting or are you responding with purpose? If this part resonated with you, let me know in the comments or just type, "I protect my peace." And if you're finding value in this message, hit the like button to keep the energy flowing. Let's keep going. Number 7, the emotional buildup. What she didn't express before, she might now unload. Confusion, frustration, even guilt. But remember, this isn't always about reconciliation. Sometimes it's about restoring her pride. See, when you leave her on read and remain silent, it creates space. And in that space, emotions start to build. At first, it's quiet tension, internal questions, maybe even self-doubt. But eventually, that pressure needs somewhere to go. So, she might reach out again, but this time with more intensity, messages that sound emotional, urgent, or even dramatic. "I just don't understand. Why are you acting like this? You didn't even care, did you?" Now here's where the test comes in. She's not necessarily looking for clarity. She's looking to release her emotional weight, to get a reaction, to feel like she still has an impact on you. And if you react, if you match her energy, you give her exactly what she's looking for, proof that she still matters. But a grounded man, a man living in alignment with himself, doesn't absorb someone else's storm. He watches it pass calmly without letting it shake him. As Epictetus wisely said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And in many cases, that's exactly what she's experiencing. Emotions magnified by silence, assumptions, and pride. Think about it. If she truly wanted to reconnect with humility and sincerity, her tone would reflect that. But when it comes out through emotional outbursts, it's often more about control than connection. So what do? You don't meet fire with fire. You don't become cold in return. You observe. You read between the lines. You listen not just to the words, but to the intention behind them. And if there's no intention to heal, no genuine accountability, no real respect in her words, then you keep your peace. You protect your energy. Because silence isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of self-control. It's the ability to choose your response instead of being dragged into someone else's emotional spiral. Let her feel what she needs to feel. Let her say what she needs to say. But don't lose your stillness trying to explain your worth to someone who only values it when it's slipping away. Your power lies not in what you say back, but in what you choose not to say at all. Number 8. The story rewrite. She may now try to regain narrative control. He's playing games or he must be hurt. But deep down she knows this wasn't a game. It was self-respect. See, silence has a way of forcing people to create their own explanations. And when your lack of response threatens her sense of control, the easiest defense is to paint you as the villain, or worse, the weak one. She may try to rewrite the story in a way that flatters her ego and softens her accountability. It's not about truth, it's about comfort. But here's the truth that can't be dressed up. You didn't chase, didn't explain, didn't engage in emotional gymnastics. You simply walked away from what no longer served your peace, and that's not immaturity. That's mastery. To the untrained eye, your silence looks like ego. But to those who understand the deeper current, it's power. Quiet, calm, unmoved power. A Stoic man doesn't perform for applause or twist his behavior to be understood. He acts with clarity and allows others to interpret however they need to. As Marcus Aurelius said, If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And what she's wrestling with now is her own judgment. She might say to friends, "He just disappeared," or, "I guess he couldn't handle me." But the part she leaves out, you chose your peace over her confusion. You stopped justifying your presence. You stopped proving your worth. And that choice, whether she admits it or not, was never about games. It was about growth. Imagine this. Someone walks out of a room that's full of noise. Not because they're angry, but because they've outgrown the volume. That's you. You didn't slam the door. You just left it gently and didn't come back. So when she starts rewriting the story, let her say what she needs to protect her pride. But don't let it shake your path. Because a man who knows who he is doesn't need to defend the chapters someone else tries to rewrite. He keeps writing in truth, in silence, in strength. And remember this, it's not your job to be understood by everyone. It's your job to live in alignment. Your story doesn't need editing. It needs integrity. And that's what you chose. Number 9, the unexpected respect. Oddly enough, your silence may lead her to respect you more. Not because you ignored her, but because you didn't betray yourself to please her. At first she may have felt confused, even annoyed by your lack of response, but over time, something shifts. She starts to realize that you didn't go silent to punish her. You did it to protect your peace. And that's something she didn't expect, because most people bend. Most people explain. Most people respond out of fear of being misunderstood, out of fear of losing someone. But you didn't. You stood your ground. And that alone sets you apart. Respect doesn't come from always being available. It comes from knowing when not to be, from having a line and keeping it. And that's what you demonstrated. You weren't rude, you weren't reactive, you were simply firm. And in a world where so many men chase approval, a man who doesn't betray himself to seek someone else's attention becomes rare, magnetic, respected. There's something powerful about a man who can say nothing and still say everything. A man who doesn't need to raise his voice to make a statement. That's stoicism in motion. As Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." This was a trial. And instead of reacting emotionally, you responded with stillness, with discipline, with self-command. Let's be real. She may not say it out loud. She might not even show it right away, but deep down she recognizes it. That you didn't fold under pressure. That you didn't trade your values for validation. And even if it caught her off guard, she'll remember it, because true respect isn't given. It's earned when a man chooses himself. Even when it would have been easier to chase, to please, to prove. So if you're wondering whether your silence made an impact, the answer is yes. Not in the way she expected, but in a way that stays with her. Because the man who can walk away, not out of anger, but out of calm self-respect, is the man who lingers longest in her mind. That's the paradox. You didn't seek her respect, but you earned it anyway. Number 10, the reconnection attempt. After a while, she might return, not with a grand gesture, but a soft reach out, a hey, a comment, a like. That's how reconnection begins. Not with words, but signals. It usually happens when she thinks you've truly let go. That moment when your silence hasn't just held, it's evolved. You didn't try to prove a point. You didn't sit around waiting. You simply continued growing, healing, building. And it's that energy, that quiet progress, that pulls her back in. Because now you feel different, unreachable, not out of bitterness, but because you've become someone who no longer needs her to feel complete. So she tests the waters. Maybe she likes a photo she ignored before. Maybe she sends a random message, something low effort, just enough to see if you'll open the door again. It's not always a full apology, it's curiosity. Curiosity cloaked in subtle gestures. But here's where the Stoic man stands apart. He doesn't confuse a signal with sincerity. He doesn't rush in to be available just because someone remembered his worth. He pauses. He evaluates, because reconnection, if it happens, should come with honesty and effort, not breadcrumbs. You respond, not react. Maybe with a nod, maybe with silence still, or maybe if her tone feels different, genuine, you respond with the same calm presence that marked your distance. You don't mirror desperation. You anchor the frame, because emotional maturity isn't just about walking away. It's about knowing how to return and when not to. As Marcus Aurelius put it, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. You're not here to make her feel what you felt. You're here to live aligned with your peace regardless of what she brings back. So when that reconnection attempt comes, and it often does, don't let your ego lead. Let your self-respect guide the way. You're not the same man she left. You've outgrown the version of yourself who needed her presence to feel whole, and now if there's a path forward, it's on your terms. Not out of spite, but out of strength. Because you didn't just survive her absence, you thrived in it. And now you're not chasing a connection. You're choosing if it's even worth opening the door again. That moment when she quietly returns can stir up old emotions. But before you respond, pause. Reflect on how far you've come. Not just emotionally, but in how you now carry yourself. This isn't about winning her back. It's about not losing yourself again. You build peace without her. So ask yourself, does this reconnection honor that peace or threaten it? If this message resonated, share your thoughts in the comments or just type, "I don't chase, I choose." And if you're feeling that shift within you, stay with me. The next part dives even deeper. So let's bring it full circle. This video wasn't just about leaving her on read. It was about what that silence represents. Discipline over impulse. Self-respect over reaction. Stillness over chaos. Because the moment you stopped chasing words, you found clarity. You discovered that not every message deserves a reply. That not every situation needs your emotional energy. And more importantly, that your peace isn't something you hand over just to keep someone else comfortable. You didn't leave her on red to punish her. You did it to protect what you've built within yourself. And whether she ever understands that or not is irrelevant. What matters is that you understand it. That kind of inner strength, it doesn't come from being cold. It comes from being clear. So, here's the reflection I want you to sit with. What have you been responding to that's been costing you your peace? And more importantly, are you ready to stop? If this video gave you clarity, helped you see yourself differently, or reminded you of your power, take a second to hit that like button. It helps us reach more people who need this message. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below sharing your thoughts. Or just leave this sentence to let me know you've made it to the end. Silence taught me more than her words ever did. Make sure to check out the recommended videos on screen. They go even deeper into what it means to move forward with strength, calm, and emotional control. Thanks for watching. Stay grounded, stay powerful, and as always, protect your peace.